Somewhere on Earth in 2010, the same 13 notes were reportedly ringing out 20,000 times every second. Not a hit single, a ringtone. The Nokia tune, 4 bars lifted from a Spanish guitar waltz written in 1902, may be the most heard melody in human history. 3 years later, the company behind it sold its phone business for scraps. This is how the loudest empire in technology went silent. Rewind to 2007. Nokia didn't just lead the phone business, it was the phone business. That year, the Finnish company shipped 437 million phones. Roughly 4 of every 10 handsets sold anywhere on Earth carried its logo, and about half of all smartphones. The company was worth around 100 billion euros. At its peak, this one firm generated close to 4% of Finland's entire economic output, one company, in a country of 5.5 million people. It was outspending nearly everyone in the industry on research, including Apple, many times over. Analysts called it unstoppable, and executives believed them. In fairness, from the very top of the world, it is genuinely hard to see the cliff. Because Nokia knew all about reinvention, it was never really a phone company to begin with. It started in 1865 as a paper mill on the Nokianverta River in southern Finland. Over the next century, it made rubber boots, car tires, cables and televisions, whatever kept the lights on through wars and recessions. Then, in the early 1990s, a new chief executive named Jorma Ollila made one of the great bets in business history. He sold or shut nearly everything else and pushed the whole company into a small, unproven market called mobile telephones. The world's first call on a GSM network, the standard behind modern mobile calls, had just been made in 1991 on Nokia equipment. The bet paid off, spectacularly. Through the 90s and 2000s, Nokia became the world's default phone. The 2110 in 1994 was the first to ship with the Nokia tune. The 3310 built a reputation for being nearly indestructible. The internet still jokes about it. And the 1100, a cheap, tough little handset launched in 2003, went on to sell roughly 250 million units, making it one of the best-selling consumer electronics products ever created. In villages that had never had a landline, the first phone a family ever owned was a Nokia. The slogan said connecting people, and for once, the slogan was simply true. Then, on the 9th of January 2007, a man in a black turtleneck walked onto a stage in San Francisco. Steve Jobs announced the iPhone, and Nokia's public reaction was a shrug. Its executives pointed out, correctly, that the new phone lacked things Nokia had shipped for years. No 3G, a weak battery, a single carrier, a price few would pay. Here is the first twist. Nokia already knew this future was coming, because Nokia had reportedly already built it. Years earlier, its own engineers had developed touchscreen prototypes and internet-ready concepts, devices that looked eerily like the one Jobs was now holding. They were shelved, too risky, too expensive, too likely to eat into the phones already making billions. The most dangerous competitor Nokia faced in 2007 was not Apple. It was Nokia's own success. Because under the shine, the software was rotting. Nokia's smartphones ran Symbian, an operating system designed for a world before touchscreens, and bolting modern features onto it meant fighting a decade of old code. The engineers knew. Middle managers knew. But researchers who later interviewed dozens of Nokia insiders described a company where bad news traveled badly. Managers reportedly afraid to tell short-tempered bosses the truth, and executives competing against each other instead of against the outside world. So the status report stayed green while the product fell behind. If you want a one-sentence autopsy of Nokia, it might be this: everyone knew and nobody said. Then Google made everything worse for free. In 2008, Android arrived. a modern smartphone system that any manufacturer could use without paying a cent. Samsung, HTC, Motorola, and a wave of new brands piled in. Watch the lines cross. In 2007, Symbian powered about 63% of the world's smartphones. Android powered none. By 2010, Android had rocketed past 20% while Symbian slid below 40%. Nokia's answer was to keep patching Symbian and to promise a next-generation system, Mi Go, which kept slipping. In 4 years, the most valuable real estate in consumer technology, the software in everyone's pocket, was surrendered without a real fight. By late 2010, the board had seen enough. In September, they hired Stephen Alop, a Canadian executive poached from Microsoft, and the first outsider ever to run the company. His mandate was simple to say and brutal to execute. Pick a future fast. Alop spent his first months asking employees a question nobody had dared ask out loud: what is actually wrong with this company? The answers flooded his inbox. In February 2011, he answered back with a memo. It became known as the Burning Platform Memo, and it leaked almost immediately. In it, Alop described a man on a North Sea oil rig, woken by an explosion fire behind him, freezing black water 30 meters below. Staying meant burning, so the man jumped. Nokia, Alop wrote, was standing on its own burning platform, and Symbian was the fire. Days later, he jumped. Nokia would abandon its software and bet everything on Microsoft's Windows Phone. But here is what the memo could not fix. The first Nokia Windows Phone was still 9 months away, and customers heard Symbian is dead right now. Sales of the phones Nokia was actually selling fell off a cliff. The company had announced the death of its own product, with nothing on the shelf to replace it. The numbers tell the rest. Nokia's share of smartphones, about half the market in 2007, had fallen to roughly 3% by 2013. The stock, which traded around $40 in late 2007, dipped below $2 in the summer of 2012. The new Lumia phones were praised by reviewers and ignored by buyers, trapped between Apple's ecosystem and Android's prices. Nokia cut tens of thousands of jobs, and in late 2012, it sold its own glass headquarters outside Helsinki, then rented the building back. The company that had once powered 4% of Finland's economy was now fighting to make the rent. On the 3rd of September 2013, the story ended in a way nobody in 2007 would have believed. Microsoft bought Nokia's entire phone business, the factories, the brands, and about 32,000 employees for €5.5 billion. Apple, by then, was earning more than that in a single quarter. Within 2 years, Microsoft had written off nearly the entire purchase and abandoned phones altogether. The Nokia name quietly disappeared from the devices that had carried it around the world. From king of the industry to sold for parts took a little over 4 years. No fraud, no scandal, no single villain. Just 4 years of hesitation. But here is the comeback the headlines missed. Nokia never actually died. The company kept its network equipment business, bought its rival Alcatel-Lucent, and today builds the invisible plumbing of the internet. 5G antennas, undersea cables, the gear your data rides on. Meanwhile, a group of former Nokia veterans founded a company called HMD Global, licensed the old name, and put Nokia-branded phones back on shelves. And the tune? It still ships on new phones today, 13 notes from a 1902 guitar waltz, outliving the empire that made them famous. Empires rarely end with a bang. Sometimes they just stop ringing. And the lesson Nokia left behind fits in one sentence: seeing the future is easy. Betting your present on it is the hard part.